Imagine a king who preferred the battlefield over the throne, whose courage was as great as his ambition. This is Richard the Lionheart, the monarch who traded the comfort of the palace for the dangers of the Crusades. Today, you will discover how he became a legend and faced one of history's greatest leaders, Saladin. But was Richard truly the hero that many believe? Or did his quest for glory cost more than he was willing to pay? Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. This helps us bring more epic stories like this to you. At the end of the 12th century, the Christian world was at war. Jerusalem, considered the Holy Land, had been captured by Saladin, the charismatic and strategic Muslim leader who unified much of the Middle East. For Europeans, Jerusalem was a spiritual symbol, and its loss was an open wound that needed to be healed. Thus, the Third Crusade was born, a military expedition led by the most powerful kings of the time, Frederick Barbarossa, Philip II of France, and Richard the Lionheart. But among them, Richard stood out. He was not just a king, he was a born warrior. While others sought to consolidate their kingdoms, Richard sought glory on the battlefield. His passion for war and his strategic genius soon turned him into a living legend, but they also brought devastating consequences to his own realm. Richard was born in 1157 in Oxford, England, but his life was anything but ordinary. He was part of the powerful Plantagenet dynasty, the son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. His family was known as much for its power as for its internal conflicts. Eleanor was one of the most influential women of her time, famous for her political intelligence and leadership. She taught Richard the art of diplomacy and rule. On the other hand, Henry II was a firm and often ruthless king, showing his son the harsh reality of power. From a young age, Richard displayed remarkable military skill. Even as a prince, he led military campaigns against his own father, joining rebellions organized by his mother. These family conflicts nearly destroyed the Plantagenet dynasty, but they also forged in Richard a fearless spirit and an unmatched ability for warfare. In 1189, after the death of Henry II, Richard inherited the English throne. However, unlike many kings, he saw the throne not as an end, but as a means to fund his true passion, the Crusades. Governing was secondary to him. Glory on the battlefield was his ultimate goal. Richard embarked on the Crusades with a clear objective: to reclaim Jerusalem. He gathered a powerful army and set off on a long and perilous journey. Along the way, he conquered Cyprus, a strategic island that not only provided essential supplies but also solidified his reputation as a ruthless leader. The conquest was so significant that Cyprus became an important Christian stronghold in the Mediterranean. However, the journey was not only filled with victories. Richard faced conflicts with Philip II of France, his initial ally. Philip, resentful of Richard's dominance, abandoned the crusade, leaving the English king as the primary leader of the campaign. These tensions among allies were just one of the many challenges Richard would face before even reaching the Middle East. Finally, Richard arrived in the Holy Land, where he confronted Saladin, one of history's greatest strategists. Saladin was not just a military leader, he was a revered figure among both his allies and enemies. The clash between Richard and Saladin is considered one of the most fascinating encounters of the Middle Ages, as both leaders were known for their bravery, intelligence, and sense of honor. The Battle of Arsuf was the defining moment of Richard's campaign. Under the scorching desert sun, he led his troops to a spectacular victory, demonstrating the courage and skill that earned him the title Lionheart. However, despite this impressive victory, Jerusalem remained out of reach. Richard realized that his army lacked the resources for a prolonged siege, and that a full conquest would be impossible. Instead of attempting to take the city by force, Richard chose to negotiate. He reached a treaty with Saladin that allowed Christian pilgrims to visit Jerusalem safely. This decision was seen as both an act of wisdom and a sign of limitation. Despite his great efforts, Richard failed to achieve the main goal of the crusade. With the campaign over, Richard began his journey back to England, but the road home was fraught with danger. While traveling through Europe, he was captured by Leopold V, Duke of Austria, who handed him over to the Holy Roman Empire. Richard spent over a year in captivity, and his freedom was only secured after an enormous ransom was paid. This ransom nearly bankrupted England's economy and caused widespread discontent among his subjects. Even so, Richard returned to the throne with the same determination. He had to deal with the betrayal of his brother John Lackland, who had attempted to seize power in his absence. But Richard, as resilient as ever, regained control of the kingdom and continued to fight for England's interests. In 1199, during the siege of a castle in France, Richard was struck by an arrow. The wound became infected and he died a few days later. His life, marked by glory, bravery, and tragedy, came to an untimely end, but his legacy continued to inspire generations. Richard the Lionheart is remembered as one of the greatest warriors of the Middle Ages. His courage on the battlefield and his determination to face impossible challenges are undeniable. However, his prolonged absence and the enormous cost of his campaigns left England vulnerable and impoverished. Was Richard a hero or a ruler obsessed with glory? His story continues to be debated by historians, but one thing is certain: he was a king who lived intensely, and his legend has endured through the centuries. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. See you in the next video.